The ruling of the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal on matters brought before it by presidential candidates Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party and Labour Party's Peter Obi is still generating reactions from Nigerians and even beyond the borders of Nigeria, even as the petitioners are now known to be headed for the Supreme Court for a final determination. The appellate court interpretations of their various prayers are still being picked apart by experts. First, from the angle of the law itself, and secondly, for what many have described as the barely concealed, if not over-the-top, display of hostility exhibited by some of the judges towards the petitioners. Many lawyers say the Supreme Court panel of justices, as may be constituted by the Chief Justice of Nigeria on Wednesday this week, will now be saddled with the onerous responsibility to consider the minutest details of not just the 13 hours of the tribunal ruling, but also go beyond that to consider how that judgment can impact interpretation of the Nigerian Constitution for many years to come. Some are in fact calling for the outright nullification of that ruling that, as it stands, affirmed the declaration of Bola Tinubu as the rightful winner of the February 25th presidential election, and therefore the duly elected president of Nigeria. In a short while, we'll begin to engage Sonny Ekwowose, a lawyer and chairman, Human and Constitutional Rights Committee of the African Bar Association. Mr. Ekwowose, who is the executive director of the Foundation for African Cultural Heritage, has also been a delegate to the United Nations.
Incredible. And as we move on from that conversation, we will get into another interesting one, this time with Chinedu Nwogbo, a wildlife conservationist who works in wildlife rescue and rehabilitation, manages a sanctuary, harboring animals that are rescued from illegal wildlife trade, wet markets, and online trade, while also promoting wildlife education across Nigeria. But we will only begin to speak with Mr. Nwogbo when we are done taking a look at Nigeria's web of wildlife crimes, the latest in Arise News' Go Wild series, as was beautifully put together by our own Arise environmental correspondent, Leila Johnson-Salami.
And as we round off the program, we won't forget to bring you a review of newspaper headlines from across Nigeria. It's going to be all that and much more today on The Morning Show.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. The Lagos State government has announced the postponement of the planned palliative works on the failed sections of the third mainland bridge. The repairs were scheduled to go on for 2 consecutive Sundays, September 17th and 24th, between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. on both days, according to a release signed by the Lagos State Commissioner for Transportation, Mr. Oluwaseun Oshiyemi. On Saturday, the postponement is due to the heavy downpour experienced in all parts of the metropolis. He explained that the rain has affected the preliminaries of the planned palliative works on the asphalt pavement of the bridge by the Lagos State Public Works Corporation.
This is Satellite Town. Satellite Town Trade Fair International Market. As of today, September 16, 2023. The heavy downpour of the rain has kept all moving vehicles, including humans. Nobody could access the road anymore due to the heavy downpour. This traffic has started all the way from P-Niger. As I when I parked there, but I think it's extending already. Everywhere is stopped up. Nobody could pass the road. Everywhere is stopped up. That's straight as you can see.
All right, it is good news that they are going to postpone this because it will cause a lot of issues with the flooding. And, you know, I know that you commute from the mainland to
Correct.
the island. So you'll be the first person I'll ask what that process is like when they close down the bridge for such palliative works, which is very important. Let's start with the Third Mainland Bridge, and then we'll go on to talk about the flooding, which we have seen so many videos on X. Shaito, I know that you're on social media. We've seen all of these horrific videos of the flooding in Lagos.
All right, thanks, Oji. It's a smart move on the part of the Lagos State government, postponing the proposed palliative works on the Third Mainland Bridge. It saddens one, breaks my heart that somehow we've allowed the Third Mainland Bridge to degenerate in terms of the potholes and palliative works required on the bridge. Even more so because of the promise that the former immediate past Minister of Works, who happened to be the governor of Lagos State, for 8 years between 2007 and 2015, Mr. Raji Fashola, Babatunde Fashola. It's sad because this is September, a new cabinet is in place, and what the new minister, Dave Umahi, former governor of Ebonyi State, who did very well in terms of infrastructural development, what he said made no reference whatsoever to the approval that Minister Fashola got on Third Mainland Bridge at the twilight of the Buhari administration, according to the Executive Order 11, which approved, there were two approvals, but the second one in specific terms was 6.3 billion naira to fix the Third Mainland Bridge. If you notice, okay, maybe you don't use that road
do.
often.
So not as much as you do, but
right.
I do.
If you notice that they started palliative works, that's the federal government, on one side of the road before Fashola left. But what he promised Nigerians was that everything would be completed before they left.
Yes.
The same way that he made that promise about the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, especially the Kara Julius Baja end of the bridge, coming into Lagos. We do not have that, unfortunately. It has worsened, it has deteriorated, and now Lagos State government is now forced to come in and say that they will have to work with the federal government in, effecting the palliative works. And the question will be that what happened to the 6.3 billion naira specifically earmarked for the surfacing, fixing the potholes and everything that Minister Fashola promised. Personally, I've lost 2 tires this year on that road. I don't know what your experience is. I have seen police vans, break down. I've seen military vehicles lose tires on that road. And there are countless, a number of videos showing the harrowing experience that people go through. The significance of that bridge cannot be overemphasized.
Absolutely.
I recall in 1990 or 1991, during the military, I think it was President Babangida that was there when that bridge was launched with fanfare. Governor Raji Rasaki, Colonel Raji Rasaki was the governor of Lagos State then. And both of them with Babangida danced to the music of Sashina Peters, because at that time it was the longest bridge in Africa. I think barely 10 years after, Egypt of course overtook us. But we are still talking about the longest bridge in Nigeria and in West Africa. And one of the most important pathways leading to everywhere. So it's iconic. And therefore, I'm surprised, really, that anybody will allow that bridge to get bad to the level that it has gotten to. You said that we will discuss the flood. Of course, we will. But I just want to point out that this is not an accusation. It is just to express worry that everything that Governor Fashola promised, we do not seem to have seen it. And I hope that Dave Umahi, the minister who has now taken over from him, will put that on board so that we don't start all over.
Absolutely.
And be requesting for more money. Thankfully, when it was raining yesterday, the Lagos State government, the governor, Mr. Governor himself, and the deputy, governor, were in Ekpe in Lagos State with the entire cabinet that has just been constituted, 38 of them, having a retreat. And thankfully still, tutoring them were 2 former governors, Governor Fashola and Governor Akinwumi. We were saying that, it's raining, we can see what is going on. Hey guys, you've got a lot of work that you need to do, particularly for Works Ministry, particularly for the Ministry of Environment, where a young dynamic man Tokunbo Wahab is now the minister, Honorable Commissioner for the Environment, and he's got his, work cut out for him. It's rainy season. It will get worse. For the next couple of months, therefore, Lagos will have to do a lot more and rise to the occasion.
Absolutely. Before you go, my angst with Third Mainland Bridge, I have to say, I know that we need a lot of work to do, but I think that it needs to be more secure as well. I have gotten a lot of, stories where people have used that bridge for their suicide mission, Shaitan. I know that you might have seen one socialite who actually tried to jump into the bridge and she was saved. But why is it that beautiful bridge cannot be more secure to prevent this type of mishap from happening? You cannot, you hardly would find this type of bridge. We just called it the longest and the biggest bridge in West Africa. Yes. Can you imagine the San Francisco Bridge? How many times you hear people jumping off of that bridge? It needs
Bridge, for example.
Exactly, it needs to be secure. So that is my angst with Third Mainland Bridge.
These are definitely not the best of times for Lagos motorists and commuters following the deplorable state of the roads in Lagos, especially when we take a look at Third Mainland Bridge. I as well commute from Ikeja down here Mondays to Thursdays, so I am very aware. It even seems as if there are people that go there in the middle of the night to go and put potholes, specifically for this reason. But what really stands out for me, outside of even the Lagos Third Mainland Bridge, is the state of the roads all across Lagos. And we begin to see how bad these roads are during the rainy season. We had a guest on yesterday, a conservationist and an environmentalist, Mr. Desmond Majekodumi, who spoke about the significance of climate change. Because the truth is, Lagos is a coastal city, and every year by this time, we have the same issue where we have floods. We have people who are sent out of their homes because of this flooding or whatnot. So what I would just like to appeal to the Lagos State government is to plan ahead. We had a break in August where it wasn't raining, and it was put out there because of the change in the weather and the climate change that there was going to be a break and they were going to see 2 months of heavy rainfall. It wasn't news, it was out there. So I would have believed that the Lagos State government would have used that time.
The August break has always been, something to expect.
Exactly, to use that time to plan and make sure that the Third Mainland Bridge is ready. Even right now, my road is being constructed, but they had to stop because of the heavy downpour, and it just looks as if nothing is going to happen over the next 2 months, and that in itself is affecting motorists. But then again, we have the blue line that is now active, and I'm hoping that in itself, which is of course above the surface, would help Lagosians commute. It's helping already. Lagosians commute. It's supposed to be taking about 100,000 to 150,000 commuters every day back and forth. So that in itself should release some of the pressure. But please, let's just plan better. The rainy season is not a surprise. It doesn't just come, here I am. We know about the time. So let's plan and do all our road construction during the dry season.
You're right. But just to add, OJ, that a Third Mainland Bridge essentially is the responsibility of the federal government. So what Lagos State government is doing is just to assist because it is here.
In Lagos.
My reservation and worry, though, is the constant and consistent use of the word palliative. This is what we used, when we're talking removal of subsidy, and then we reduced, the intervention that was meant to come from the government to bread and butter, to gari and rice, being shared to people. Now palliative will even be more appropriate for a road like this, but I don't think that an iconic bridge like the Third Mainland deserves just what the Yorubas will call shagbelojuyoyo.
You have to tell us what that is.
Which simply means putting a plaster on the wound, doing something temporary, doing something that will not last. It is not a palliative that is required. No. It is fixing the road. Nice. Especially when you recall that in 2020, the same bridge was closed for almost 6 months, over weekends and, etc. Governor Fashola did say that they didn't realize that the surfacing was bad. They fixed other things, the concrete, the pillars, the water structures and everything. But then maybe somebody dropped the ball at that point that you wouldn't know that in 3 years' time, the surfacing of that iconic bridge will be this bad. So don't give us a shagbelojuyoyo. Give us something that will be, long-lasting, something that we can be proud of. You know, I think that's what that bridge deserves.
Yeah, earlier we played a video, and that was in Satellite Town, and we're talking about the flooding right now. And, you know, you could see, I mean, you heard that histrionics from that gentleman there talking about the fact that the whole place is flooded and there was no movement. But how much can we add to that from urbanization and improper urban, how much role does that play in that? And also the fact that there is poor drainage system in Lagos. Most of those videos that you have seen on social media, I mean, how much can we attribute that to poor drainage system?
And even poor waste management
Poor waste management as well. We've seen that some people have said that these houses were built on sewers. I mean, how hard is that to do? I mean, we've seen these things happen all over the world, the flooding. It's, you know, we could attribute that to climate change. But this is just wrong. This is wrong, totally wrong. Steve?
Mr. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu made reference to that yesterday, you know, when he addressed the press during the retreat with the cabinet. You know, he acknowledged the fact that, yes, there is a lot that the government, you know, can do and ought to do. But he also, you know, was very emphatic about the poor waste management system, particularly on the part of the people. What we see is twofold. Lagos is a coastal city. A good chunk of the state is below the sea level. Up till, you know, if you get to Oworonshoki, you know, it's really below the sea level. And you really can't short-circuit nature. So once it rains, and we discussed it yesterday, you know, just like Keishton said, and Mr. Majekudunmi. What happened in Libya, for example? The volume of rain that ordinarily will have come in 6 months came in 3 hours. That will be a disaster. If it happens in Lagos, it will be disastrous. Don't let us sugarcoat, you know, anything. Which is the reason why government will have to be proactive. People think that there is no Lagos is an urban jungle without drainage system. No, I disagree. And I know for a fact, you know, there are functional drainage systems, but the system sometimes, you know, is being short-circuited. People getting approvals that they are not supposed to get. People, you know, building in places that they are not supposed to build. And it comes back to the government to enforce the law and to ensure that things are done properly and correctly. Okay, so we have a new cabinet in place. Give a marching order and do things differently. If it rains, the beauty of this is that in 2-3 hours, if it's just a normal rain, you'll see that most of these waters will disappear. But if it rains consistently, like we used to have all those 7 days non-stop, you will find a lot of places flooded. Yesterday, when I was coming, you know, to the studio from the mainland, a good part of the 3rd mainland beach was flooded too. You know, a good part. But of course, by the time I was returning, it has receded. That's how rains work, especially if there are, you know, drainage system. But where there are no, you know, good drainage system, especially along Ikorodu, along all this Badagry Expressway, this is what you get. It will swallow vehicles. If you're not careful, it will swallow houses and even human beings. So government has its job well cut out for it. We can't say it, you know, enough. It is the duty of government to enforce the law, and the laws are there.
Yeah, they need to protect their citizens.
Absolutely.
I mean, very quickly, I was just trying to just look at what we have online to just see how the Lagos State government has responded to everything that has been going on. And they've actually released a statement. Special advisor on drainage and water resources made an appeal on behalf of the government, saying that the floods were due to the coastal nature of the city, and they acknowledge the damage done, and they're doing everything that they can to make sure that Lagos, which is prone to flooding and has the smallest landmass in Nigeria with 23 million Nigerians. Of course, they're trying to, I see in this statement, they're almost trying to push the blame on the statistics and where Lagos is located. But like I said, planning is very, very important. Nimet had said from the beginning of the year that we should be expecting heavy downfall in major states around Nigeria, with Lagos being one of them. So I understand that they've put out this.
I don't think he was trying to push the blames. He was trying to state the facts and to plead helplessness. I mean, that's what I think.
I like that point. Plead helplessness, because at this point, that's what it is.
That's what it is.
It appears to be.
They look overwhelmed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess this is where we'll end our news headline today.
Definitely.